I got interviewed for a position just about 2 years ago, for example, where it never got forward. I'm now consulting for them. Clearly, I'm adding value today. Clearly, they knew I was going to be able to add value today. Clearly, they said to themselves, what are we going to do with somebody who's at the twilight of this career?
We were talking, and I went back and took a brief look at what we were talking about, because it's been a little while since we actually had this conversation. We were talking about what it's like to be a follower, a worker for someone who, when the manager is older, or when you're going through the recruiting process and you find yourself dealing with HR who's younger than you are, significantly younger. And you were giving some tips about what people can do. You gave some great tips about what people can do in terms of dealing with a manager who's younger. I'm wondering if you could give some tips or some context to what it's like to deal with HR that's younger, and what are some things that you could do as a person who's got a lot of experience to demonstrate that you're still willing to be that kind of follower. You're not, especially if you're not looking for a management position, what can you do to help people understand and frame where you're coming from?
So that's very difficult, all right, because it requires on one hand to put your ego aside, which is very difficult for a lot of people. At some point in one's career, one would hope that individuals should be able to recognize their contribution. What are their strong points? This is one of the things that one would hope that leadership develops with their team members over the years. But you would hope at some point you come out with understanding what you can contribute, what's your added value. So number one, it had coming from a position of no ego, but knowing what your value is to organization is extremely important. Number two is that when you now bring that to the HR or the hiring manager, is being able to present that added value as a fact, not overblown, not over emphasizing what one can and cannot do. It's extremely important to be able to express yourself with confidence, yet not ego. That's number one. Number two, many people get to a point where they express, they broadcast their age. I'm not saying I don't say hide your age. I think I personally believe that having worked in the industry for a long period of time, you bring a lot of added value. Just being able to say you're in the industry for so much amount of time, but when you deliver that message of added value without ego, you have to broadcast it in a way which is appealing to the other side, and the appealing to the other side is broadcasting in a positive, and I'm going to use the word energetic fashion.
So I think that, those tools are tools that a lot of leaders use. Those are tools that followers can use as well. But I'm interested if we could dig down for a minute into, you're in the interview process with HR, and they have an inherent nervousness, you're saying. You said there seems to be some kind of nervousness that goes on when there's this younger person who's interviewing you, and you come in and you've got years of experience, but you're also going to be dealing with a younger manager, and they have to somehow make that work. How do you help them? What would you suggest to someone to help them sort of figure out a way to let HR know that they're okay, you're okay working for younger people? You're okay working with a team leader who's younger than you. You're okay without just coming out and saying it. Obviously you can come out and say it, but there's more than just saying. You have to, I don't want to say ooze because that's not right the word, but there's a word for it. Like, let people know. Like, there's got to be a way to do that. I'm curious.
So it's even worse than that sometimes, because sometimes I'm the age of the father of the person who's interviewing me. I have children that are older than sometimes the person who's interviewing me. So and that could very well be the case when you're 30 years old and the person that's doing the interviewing, then that's a real possibility. I go back to say, first of all, I think it's very clear to be very, very clear and concise about what your role is and how you understand your role. Okay.
Mhm.
And expressing your what you see as your value to whatever the position is being presented, to keep it in perspective, but to continually talk about the value you bring and focus on that, and take the age off the table. Uh,
Mhm.
what I'm saying is, I think is valid for any interview. I mean, you
100%.
you come into any interview, and you should be talking about what you bring to the table. You see what the job is being offered. You see what the discussion is, and you should be able to say, okay, I can deliver this. It's sometimes very difficult for people to talk about what their value is to the organization. I think it's
Right, because very often they feel like they're gonna come across as being, oh, I'm bragging, or I don't necessarily have solid proof in terms of numbers to show somebody how good I am at something. So it comes across as exaggerated. It comes across as, and I'm not. You should not. To be very clear to anyone who's listening, you should not be exaggerating your numbers or saying you can do something when you can't. That's a recipe for disaster.
it's a recipe for
But
disaster, but people do use that, and people do get job offers based upon what they've told as opposed to what they can do. I think when I think part of the process of talking about added value is using concrete examples of where you've done certain things, and it has to do with a certain amount of preparation when you come into a when you come into interview in general. And
mhm,
interviewing and job hunting is a full-time job, and you just can't walk into an interview and wing it. That's you said it's a recipe for disaster. Again, I think the emphasis is on being clear and providing concrete examples when you say something, where you've delivered that, what you've done, and so on, and making it very
mhm,
clear that you understand the role that's being presented. If you come across as being fuzzy and talk about how you want to get back into other positions, then you're going to put the interviewer in a difficult state of are they hiring the right person?
right,
There's so many other things on the table when a person of advanced years is being interviewed for a job. You have to keep it very clear. I'll give you some examples, because some examples of I got interviewed for a position just about 2 years ago, for example,
mhm,
where I never got I knew the people interviewing me. They knew me. I was being interviewed for a position. It never got forward. I'm now consulting for them.
right,
And I said to the hiring people, so why didn't you take me? Clearly, it was an ageism thing, right? Clearly,
mhm,
I'm adding value today. Clearly, they knew I was going to be able to add value today. Clearly, they said to themselves, what are we going to do with somebody who's at the twilight of his career? Um,
mm,
I don't think it was about. I think it was valid. I think that they've seen. And when I finally got to the company, after going through all sorts of clearances to get to them, they were pleased to have me. They were waiting for me. On one hand, people see the value. On the other hand, people don't see don't seem to get past sometimes the age. It really
mhm,
takes people on the hiring side to takes a certain amount of ability for them to see past the age. On the flip side, you have to help them. If you aren't
right,
helping them, if you haven't presented who you are, if you're not presenting yourself as being as good and as energetic as somebody half your age, then you're giving them all sorts of reasons to pass over you for someone else,
right,
just because of age. You have to take age off the
right,
table. You have to be able to present yourself as someone who's capable of doing the work, can do the work, proves to do the work, and has great added value, and is capable as anybody half their age to do it. And
someone who's looking forward to the challenges and looking forward to working with people who are of a like mind, and you're willing to, it doesn't bother you to be in a situation where someone who's younger than you is leading that process, because you want to be part of that process. You want to help move things forward, and you want to bring all the value that you bring and all your experience to the table in order to make that happen.
If someone even mentions that in the interview, so how would you feel working for someone who's younger than you? Sometimes even come up with how would you mind working for someone of a different sex or different gender or whatever the terminology is, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And you just take it off the table. Fine, no issue. The idea is to take these.
Wouldn't bother me at all.
It wouldn't even say it wouldn't bother me. It said it's fine. That's it. It doesn't bother me at all. Then that's an opening for what do you mean doesn't bother you at all? Say it's fine.
Right. Yeah.
Not an issue.
All right. So what I'd like to just sort of move from there into is when you got hired and at the position you're in now, you are working for someone who is younger than you. Your managers are younger than you. They are leading a strategic process. I want to dig in for a minute onto that topic of because strategy is the thing that gives leaders and team members something to grasp onto and move forward with. It's that thing that's sort of that process that we all work on together. So I'm curious what it was like coming in and having someone who's guiding process who's younger than you, and you coming in as somebody with a lot of experience, being able to see that process. When you first engaged with the new strategic process that you were starting at Red Hat, was it something which you felt like you had not just a lot of value to add, but were you able to even help the leader guide the process? And how quickly were you comfortable with, maybe even taking that on and saying, hey, I think that, or I'd like to make a suggestion about, and how would you do that? Or how did you do that?
So in Red Hat, actually, my manager is someone I worked for before. So that's so it's a second position. We worked together. He was younger he was younger than me before as well.
Wow, amazing math.
That's one advantage. Have someone who believes in you and is wanting to bring you in, have already knowing what you offer. But even in the previous position, there is a huge role for people of experience to work with people coming into the industry, to discuss with them what it is to be a professional in the IT industry. I continually position myself as being someone who is willing to mentor, willing to work with other people, in conjunction with my leader, my team leader, right? Mm-hmm. But to say, okay, I'm willing to mentor, I'm willing to help. Let's work together on plans, with you telling me where you want me to add my value. Mm-hmm. You have to be very, very careful when and I've seen this in other things as well, not just in the IT industry. You probably remember that I do Tai Chi, and every so often when I go to my Tai Chi class and I overstep the bonds of my position with my Tai Chi teacher, even though she expects me to be teaching and leading, but I do something that's remember to what's your place, who's in charge, who's got the conch, the conch, whatever it's called, right? Who's playing the tune, and you're back.
Right, who's guiding this process? Who's guiding the process?
Right, who's guiding the process? And you're the backup, and you're supporting. And as long as we're all playing our roles, then I think is a huge role for someone with experience to fill in a team, especially when you have people who are new in the industry. New in the industry doesn't necessarily mean age. I mean, new industry means people come in from other backgrounds and are trying to make an impact.
I would think that's even true for people who have been in the industry for a little while, but don't have the experience of the changes that have taken place. I mean, we spoke about a whole bunch of changes at the beginning of this conversation that the industry as a whole has gone through. And someone who has that experience and has seen those changes, going from the really clear silos between, system admin and developers to, the joint team maneuvers with hybrid this and DevOps linking between these and everything that goes on in between that. I think that even in that situation where a lot of those people do have experience, they're not new in the field, but having someone who's got that experience of, I've gone through this, I know what's going on, and I understand the strategic process that's holding us all together here pretty well, it should impact how much influence you have on the team as a whole and how you relate to the leader. No?
It should. Again, it depends on how you position yourself. In the early days of work with Red Hat, there's of course there's a lot of communities, a lot of openness, and people discussing things, and so there's a local group, for example, that meets every Sunday and so on for an hour just to chat and throw the bull. And I came into that group initially just looking to hook up with other people. One thing is to broaden your base within the company, right? Is that if you really want to be impactful, you really want to show value, you want to find the places where you fit into the organization, again within reason of what your role is. So I joined one of these conversations, and my first comments, people said, they ask, "Oh, who are you?" and where'd you come from, and so on. The moment I start talking about my background, people sort of said, "You're doing what?" And I said to them, okay, let's talk a bit about, what do you guys want to expect to be doing in 5-10 years time? You're in your 30s, you're doing programming, where do you see yourself in the industry? How do you think what's your, because people don't think about that.
And they don't think about, wait a second, I could be 50 or 60 and still doing the same thing that I'm doing. Is that possible?
Is that possible? Or do I want to be doing it? Or what's the development path for me? Do I want to be doing this? What does it mean in the industry today to be doing? If you're a COBOL programmer, you can make lots of money, but that's a very niche market, right? You want to be adding value. One of the things is to make sure that you're rounding yourself up. You're continually doing things that challenge you, that challenge the industry, that are in line with industry. You just can't sit back and expect things to come. You have to step forward, and you have to make your position known. You have to say to your management, to your leadership, you want to do things because it stretches you and it broadens your experience.
Right. And that's a choice. Leadership is a choice. Saying I want to move into management is a choice, and there are people who choose not to do that.
Not just move into management. I mean, any sort of move, any sort of new skills that you do is. I mean, you can fall into things, as I have, but you can then make choices, as I've also had. They're both valid. Trying to say that your skill set is what you've experienced. And if you aren't putting that skill set together and figuring out what's your value, then you may find yourself out of a position because you haven't figured out what these things are that you brought together, and requires self-awareness, requires you to understand what your resume says about you, what you say about yourself.
How you talk about yourself now, but also how you talk about yourself as a future self. What is it you want to be doing in 10 years?
So those are the funny questions, right? When you're in your 60s, what do you want to be doing in 5 years' time? Well, I want to be at a beach somewhere. That's that's you have to think about those answers before they come up, and you have to be real, right? So when my management says to me, we need people to be certified because in 3 years' time, I sort of look at them and go, okay, we'll put it in perspective. All right, I understand it's important, but let's let's put things in perspective. What's the most impactful thing I could do today? Is this process do you want me to go through now the most important thing for us as an organization? Because I am in a position where I can do other things for you and not have to worry about those goals that are really really short term.
Which is actually very interesting, because what you're saying is that because of where you are in terms of your position, and also in terms of the state, the situation you're at in terms of how close you are to that point of, I'm not going to be doing this anymore, I'm going to be retired, right? You can say, listen, I don't need to go through this L&D process. I don't need to necessarily learn this new skill set or this new programming language or this new whatever, because you're talking about 3 years, 4 years from now when it's going to be relevant. The people who should be doing that are the younger people. Let them do it. And I can take some of the weight of what they're doing and make sure that the process that we're going through now stays even keel while they have to focus on this other thing as well.
And that's a very fine line. You have to be very careful when you do that, right? Because then you're stepping out of the, where's my added value, and moving into, I could play another role that the company or your management may or may not want to. So again, that's it's a very fine line. You have to have a good open relationship with your manager. I think the experience that one brings to the table is be able to have an open, clear voice with your management. Even if it's not accepted, right? Even if they say, okay, that's very nice, but we want you to do this, and be very. And by the way, you may just find yourself in not comfortable and have to move on. That's also a possibility, which puts you back in the job search role. But the ability to openly talk with your management, because you're at that level where you can express yourself without fear of backlash, is really important. Then you can add the most. If you're continually backpedaling and trying to find, how do I say this to my management, then you're going to find yourself in I think in a position where you're doing things you don't want to be doing. And I think that's a bad. I said, at the beginning of my career, the first 10 years, I did a lot of crap that I wouldn't do today. But that's because in your career, and you do what you're told, right? It takes you years to figure out that you can say no. At some point, you develop you should be able to develop a skill set that you talk openly and clearly to your management about what's your value, what do you bring, how can we work together to make the most of it. If you don't want to use it, I still bring value in whatever I'm doing, but to always present the extra. If you always present the extra, then you have real value to the company.
All right. So one last question, and I think we're going to close it out after this. With hybrid work and remote work, how is that impacting your ability to relate to your manager and have good relations with your other teammates? Because you're not sitting in the same room and seeing each other every day, and able to have that back and forth that sort of creates the bonds that allow you for you to really be the mentor when they need it, and also be the follower when they need it. I'm curious.
So virtual is, as you know, as we're doing it right now, right, is much more difficult than face to face. It requires being able to be honest, be able to read people and to focus, right? It takes a one of the things about doing things virtually is doing one thing, during the virtual meeting, and I continually find myself doing other things. There are, as I just did now, by the way, I did something else while you're asking me the question, which is nice. But I find doing things virtually requires extra attention to keep myself focused. That's number one. Number two, I found two main issues with the virtual activity in general. One is the people who can't work virtually because they can't focus, because they can't find a spot in their house that's conducive to doing work that's similar to an office. The flip side of that is the people who can't stop. People who don't know when 9, 10, 11, 12 hours of sitting in front of the computer working is enough. Finding that right balance between your home and on both sides of the equation is extremely important. When you're working with remote people, you really have to consciously touch base. It's very easy just not to contact people. Okay, it's very easy to be, at some point, just to go, okay, oh, so I haven't spoken to anybody in a week. All right, is that okay? It's not okay. That's number one. Number two, the medium is extremely important. So if I really need to talk to somebody, really want to have a one-on-one with my manager, then I want to see his face. I don't want to have it over a phone. I don't want to have it over a chat. I don't want to have it over
Mm-hmm.
email. And having that one-on-one with the manager is extremely important to make sure he gets the amount of time with you that you need, and you get the amount of time from him or her that they need. On the flip side is there are chats, and many of them, and there are emails. Each has a medium, and each is important, and each has a way of being properly used. So if I'm mentoring somebody, then a phone call may be enough. I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
have FaceTime with them. But if I'm expecting them to report to me, I don't want to chat. I want an email, and I want to be able to critique an email that I get and say, okay, you sent me this email. This is what I think you should be doing, because emails are authoritative. Emails are trackable. Emails are it's written down. Chat,
Mm-hmm.
something which disappears, even though sometimes they don't disappear. But chat is something people can whip off,
Mm-hmm.
and spend less time on. So
Mm-hmm.
each medium has its use, but doing it virtually requires you to figure out what's the best way. And by the way, of course, everybody has a different tools that they use,
Right.
and you have to be able to adapt yourself to what's going on. But I think it's important to use the right medium for the right usage, and sitting virtually from a team. And it's not just, by the way, Corona. I sat virtually from a team. I sat here in Israel. I had someone work for me in France, another person in Seattle, and two other people in Nashville, Tennessee. And my boss was in Boston, and his boss was in California. And that was over 14 years ago, without all these wonderful tools.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires structure, requires you to really focus your time, block out time, and make sure you're filling those requirements as a team member and as a team mentor, and use the right tool for the right effort. So it really takes you to really have to focus.
So it's about creating boundaries. First of all, is what you're saying, is creating clear boundaries between work and your outside life, and knowing when to set those boundaries and live within them, and figuring those boundaries both physically as well. Like, here, this is my workspace. Here's a space where I can work, but also those boundaries in terms of time, which is very important. And you're also saying that the medium matters. The way you talk to someone, the way you're going to get them on board, the way you're going to be able to have that relationship will totally depend upon what the nature of the discussion is going to be, but also how well you need to know and see how they're reacting, or how much depth you need to the conversation. Like you said, a chat is somebody whipping something off versus an email, which takes, someone's going to put a little bit more effort in and going to actually, there's a record here of what you said and why you said it, and versus a conversation where it's that one-on-one of really having the relationship, which is much more relationship oriented. And you've experienced that change for at least 14 years now, you're saying, where you've seen it go from telephones and faxes and emails to Zoom / Slack / WhatsApp.
we had IRC many years ago,
Right.
and so on. But the ability to whip off a message is actually very good, right? And sometimes it's overboard, right, with all the congratulations and the smileys and the happy birthdays you get and so on. I think it's still overkill. But the email is a horrendous tool, but if it's used correctly, it can have great use. And I'll just give two examples. I was in a company once where everybody used the three-letter acronym PSB. Please see below. Now, on the original email, you see, he sends an email to somebody, and he puts his PSB in, and that's all very well and good. But by the fourth person PSB, there is no way to track the thought process. There's no way to see who said what, where. It's completely a mess. So it's very nice to do PSB if you're the first person, but after that, forget it. Number one. Number two, the email is extremely important when you want to structure something, when you want to tell a story. Telling a story in email require. I actually we did a course in one of the companies at Cisco. We did a course on how to write an email, how to write an executive email, different than writing an email to a boss or to a colleague. The structure is different. But when you put an email together, it's as you said, you put some thought behind it and so on. The worst thing about putting an email together is not getting any answers.
Mhm.
Not getting the vacation message. I've been chasing with somebody now in my company for 2 weeks. She's on vacation. How was I supposed to know?
See, but there's there's an out of office messaging thing on every single platform that exists.
Well, when you set it up,
Right.
and of course, sending an email to somebody, and they say you have a exchange going on, and then it stops. Or never again. You send an email to somebody, he never got a response. Legitimate response is not interested. It's not in the whatever, right?
Not relevant. No, thank you.
Thank you very much. So a no response is not acceptable. It's like walking down the street, somebody, they say hello, and they ignore you.
Mhm.
This is just done electronically, so it's all very easy.
Right. Oh, I didn't see your email.
That happens. You don't see an email.
It happens.
It happens. It was overlooked. It went into spam. You didn't see it. That could happen. But after the fifth, have you seen this? I reminded you, and nothing. I'm not interested. Okay, I'll stop sending you emails.
Right.
That's legitimate. So the medium is important, but the use of it's important as well. And to understand why I'm sending it this and not sending it in such a way. It's one of my startup ideas, by the way. How do you bring all the messages into one thread? I want to know what my conversation with Dr. David Leitner has been over the past 10 years. What have we exchanged?
There's actually a company that's doing that. Well, not exactly 10 years, but there's a company now, I think it's called Calabria. And it's trying to reinvent how we use email and how to make it more collaborative.
It's not email, though. It's the fact that I've sent you an SMS, and we've had WhatsApps, and maybe Telegram, and obviously Facebook communications. And how do I bring this into a holistic? Now I was told you my idea, right? It's okay. I have no business model behind it, so that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem with the idea, right? But how do I create a holistic view of the conversation I've had with somebody? And even from a business perspective, I want to know what we discussed and what was the exchanges and what did I send to you and what did you answer me? And you said you asked me in WhatsApp once, and then you answered an email, and then we had a chat, and then you sent me an SMS, and then you handed us a paper document which I scanned and sitting in a file folder. So it's a mess. It's a mess. The communication and then the structure of our communication is just a mess.
Well, I think that's an amazing idea, and I would love to see it happen in real time, because I know I'm a mess when it comes to communication. I got so many channels of communication, it's ridiculous. Okay, so with that, I would like to close this out. I have found this conversation to be very interesting because, well, actually, I've found it not just very interesting, but it gives me a lot of motivation for two reasons. It's interesting because it brings a very different perspective on the role of followers into any business. Because when you're talking about people who are older coming in and working with people who are younger, or going through the HR process, the interview process with people who are younger than them, with the foreknowledge that they have a barrier, an obstacle that they have to overcome, I think that's a very important topic. And I also think that it's a very worthwhile thing to think about as a follower. If you are not going to be in management position, or even if you're going to be in a middle management position and not in a executive leadership position, but you have 30 years of experience, what does that mean? And how do you do that? And I think that you brought some really great ideas about how to do that. And the other thing that I found extremely interesting throughout this conversation is that a lot of what you discussed is relevant to people who are younger as well. Because you bring that experience and you're saying, hey guys, you're going to be in my position in 20, 30 years. Where do you want to be? What are you going to do in terms of the way you relate to the world around you to make sure that the outcome is one that you're happy with, one that feels good for you?
And it's also for the younger person, it's also when you're in your career, Are you developing your career? What are you saying when you develop your career, right? Which will lead you in 10, 15 years in the future. It'll bring you somewhere. You may or may not want to get there, but you're there. What does it say about you? What does it mean? What does it mean about you as a contributor today, or as a leader today? And if you haven't put that into some perspective, then
right, especially when you have the ability now to make choices, and you have choices in front of you that will allow you to help guide that process and not let the process guide you, which is a very important choice that we make. So, Eddy, thank you very, very much. I've actually learned quite a bit, and I've appreciated this conversation. And I apologize for the technical issues that we had.
I give you a chance on the clean shirt.
And I look forward to further conversations, because this was awesome.
We hope so too.
Thank you for joining us in the Doctor's Den. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hope to see you next time.